Good afternoon, Commander-in-Chief, President Julius Malema, the Deputy President Floyd Shivambu, Commissars, fellow fighters, ground forces, comrades, African brothers and sisters here at home and at large, and Africans in diaspora. My name is Sam Matthias, who sincerely want to apologize for the breakup due to the network problem and the quality of the video. We sincerely apologize for that. That having been said, I welcome you to the EFF initiative, hashtag EFF Book Club. Today we are discussing a book by a renowned revolutionary, Vladimir Lenin, What is to be Done? The burning question of our movement, which was written in 1902. This year, as we said earlier, that it marks 150 years since the birth of Lenin. We celebrate his life and time. Lenin was born on the 22nd of April 1870 in Russia, and he died on the 21st of January 1924 at the age of 54 years. We bow our heads in salutation and accord Lenin our greatest regards posthumously. On the 150th anniversary of Lenin, there is everything worthy to celebrate his larger-than-life contribution to the socialist movement internationally, to make deeper reflection on the profound role he played and the proud legacy he left for the working-class people world over. We cannot regard the writing of the document, What is to be Done, as a mere accident of history. Because just as early as 1902, when the Russian Revolution was still in its embryonic state, Lenin wrote this document. And this is among many things that he said, which I will quote. History has confronted us, Russian Marxists, with an immediate task which is the most revolutionary of all immediate tasks that confront the proletariat of any country. The fulfillment of this task, the destruction of the most powerful bulwark, not only in Europe, but also in Asia, and all reactionary elements in Russia, would make the Russian proletariat vanguard of the international revolutionary movement. Close quote. What is to be done is essentially a question of both strategy and tactics. It's central in propelling the revolution forward. According to Sun Tzu, the Chinese military scientists and strategists had this to say about this question of strategy and tactics. That strategy without tactics is the lowest road to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. This is a serious subject of inquiry which can on no account be neglected. And the question, what is to be done, is a compelling question. Why should a movement like the EFF anchor its strategy and tactics and approach on the question of what is to be done? What is to be done, as Lenin illustrated, is an essential question at the heart of Marxism. Marxists are compelled at all material time to be seized with this question. It is uppermost in the minds of Marxists. Strategy and strategical and tactical decisions are just about this question. What is to be done? Many questions that are secondary, such as how do we organize the workers, the working class, the unemployed, the youth, the students? What methods do we use? What arguments to advance in discussions and debate? Who does what? When and with what? And how will we best enable us to change the society around us in the way in which we wish? Are important questions. Karl Marx, famous 11 Theses of Feuerbach, had this to say. Philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. However, the most important point is to change it. This is an instructive command from Karl Marx about taking the struggle forward. So Marxism is distinguished from all other studies and theories of left-wing doctrines and liberals by its insistence on answering the question, what is to be done. Furthermore, what is to be done is about the dialectical unity between theory and practice. We cannot escape that dialectical unity. What are the tendencies that informed the writing of the Treatise by Lenin in 1902? It was internal contradictions and tendencies that were emerging within the party then. What is to be done was directed against those elements who in early days wanted to undermine the theory of Marxism. And Lenin had to respond to such tendencies. And in responding to those tendencies, he wrote the document, What is to be Done. And amongst many things that Lenin brings to our attention are these contradictions. And he writes this to challenge elements of reaction within the Communist Party, who had concerted efforts in distracting the organization from fulfilling its revolutionary duty, insisting that workers must not engage in politics but engage in economic struggles on bread and butter issues and so forth, arguing that revolution has got no relevance to the workers. What is to be done confronted these reactionary elements and counter-revolutionaries. And that led to the split of the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party into two groupings of factions, the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks in 1903. These reactionary elements insisted that party must not invest in political education, in conscientization of members, that the theory is useless, is only good for the select few. And Lenin says to the orthodox and pseudo-Marxists that that is wrong. This theory must be taken to workers, must be taken to students, must be taken to the proletariat, must be taken to the peasants, and insisted that there are about 4 tendencies which had to be confronted. He identified them as follows. 1, that the party must fight against dogmatism and freedom of criticism, because orthodox and pseudo-Marxists insisted on a freestyle approach, a laissez-faire attitude towards the revolution, and insisted that the party must be criticized no matter what, and there must be no bounds, no limitation, no restrictions to allow them to criticize the party. Lenin says that was wrong. And furthermore, he says there is a problem of populism or populist elements. Lenin then referred to them as narodism, who denied that workers must play a leading role in the revolution. Thirdly, Lenin identified opportunism of orthodox and pseudo-Marxists within the working class movement. Fourthly, he says there must be a struggle against spontaneity of the masses and narrow trade unionism, which the economists at the time thought that workers should confine themselves to economic demands and not wage a political struggle. Lenin fought against these elements. Lenin insisted that these elements must be fought, and if they've got to choose between the revolutionary path and the path of opportunism, revisionism, and opportunism, they must follow that path and leave the working class to guide and shape their own movement. And he said, it is necessary that the party does not neglect the role of theory, because he said the neglect of theory will inevitably lead to the swamp of opportunism within the party. He observed, as rightly observed, that without the revolutionary theory, Lenin said, there can be no revolutionary movement, and only a party that is guided by the most advanced theory can be able to lead the revolution. What is to be done is a book of key importance to the Marxist conception of the task of the working class party. To understand the circumstances in which it was written, as an aid to grasping its principal points, the reader should of course consult the relevant documents in the party. Amongst them is the documents on the Communist Party of Soviet Union Bolshevik, and read the history and circumstances that led to the shaping of the revolutionary spirit in Russia. In doing just that, it is recognized and also accepted that there is a proposition among socialists that socialism derives its claim to a science from the three sources and component parts of Marxism. And Marxism enables us to undertake scientific investigation and make necessary proportions about this. These are briefly: 1, German philosophy; 2, English political economy; 3, the French Revolution, which the French Revolution was and is a doctrine that inculcates and teaches us about the class struggle. Why the materialist conception of history is so important? It's important because unless the people appreciate the materialist conception of history and its impact on their lives, Lenin makes the following point, as I quote: "People have always been foolish, and foolish victims of deception and lies and self-deception in politics, and they will always be until they have learned to seek out the truth. They have learned to seek out the interests of the class that they belong to, over and above and behind the moral, religious, political, and social phrases, declaration, and promises. Marx's philosophical materialism alone has shown the proletariat the way out of the spiritual slavery in which all oppressed classes hitherto languished." That's Lenin on the three sources and three components of Marxism. Lenin saw in this trend the nucleus of opportunism within the ranks of the party in 1902, and realized that there is an element of class collaboration from orthodox and pseudo-Marxists. Amongst them, there were elements of economists who were referred as economists then, who were beginning a campaign to demand freedom of criticism in the party, attacking the party left, right, and center, in expressing narrow political views and accusing Lenin of all sorts of and manner of things. The first chapter of What is to be Done is accordingly devoted to the question of freedom of criticism and dogmatism. Lenin shows that freedom of criticism and elements that advance that argument demanded that the means to embrace bourgeois ideas should be allowed in the party. The means to allow bourgeois aspirations and mode of thinking should be allowed in the party. They demanded to go freestyle, a laissez-faire, as is commonly the case among free agents, and that this opens the way for collaboration with reactionary elements such as the bourgeoisie. Lenin was, of course, quick to tell these reactionary elements that they are free to leave and to take the path of class collaboration, but not to drag the party with them. And he said they are free to go. He further shows that to confine the working class movement to economic struggle alone means to give up the political struggle, and so to condemn workers to eternal wage slavery. And this is what we need to combat in South Africa, where there is an emerging wave to tame our people, make them good boys and girls, and behave in the conformity of the former liberation movement. The economists relied, amongst other things, on spontaneity within the organization, which Lenin says it was wrong and it must be confronted. And he says spontaneity, amongst other things, amounts to taking a tailoring, or what Lenin called tailorism, within the working class movement, which is acting like a tail behind events, instead of giving leadership for and in the name of the party and the working class. He also says it would be wrong for the working class movement to base its programs on spontaneity or on the result of spontaneous economic struggles alone. Political knowledge, revolutionary theory must be introduced among members within the working class movement as a whole. Lenin also identified opportunism, as we said earlier, and he says there must be concrete action to combine political and economic struggle, just as the EFF is leading the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. He says trade unionism, equally, just like opportunism and revisionism, are enemies of the working class, and those who would only depend and rely on trade unionism as a form of consciousness are not honest and genuine revolutionaries. They need to elevate and escalate the level of consciousness to the working class or proletariat consciousness. Because to advocate only for economic struggle, orthodox and pseudo-Marxists sink into reformism, revisionism, and they bury their heads into the swamp of opportunism. Because for them it's nice to be opportunistic. Economists and pseudo-Marxists did not bother themselves about the work, political work within the organization, and they wanted it to be neglected, rather to reduce the party, or the Communist Party then, into a social club of highly learned individuals who come to quarrel about this or that, any other issue. Lenin has to deal with these matters and these tendencies because he had to deal decisively with elements which Lenin described them as liquidationists, elements that wanted to liquidate the party, collapse it, and kill it. And he said, we need to liquidate the liquidationists before they liquidate us. Furthermore, Lenin, as he introduces this beautiful theory of struggle for the working class, and when he raises the question what is to be done, points out that the appearance of anti-Marxists within different socialist formations world over, precisely in the labor movements, who could not by accidental occasions arise from character of economic development in all capitalist states and bury themselves below and behind reformism. And he says reformism is just as dangerous to the working class revolution as opportunism and revisionism. In what is to be done, Lenin further deals with the question of party and party building. He says there's no way in which you can lead the revolution for as long as you don't have a party of a new type. And this party must build its structures, it must build organizational power, it must build mass power, it must build political power, it must build political, economic power as well as state power. And that's the only way that the party can lead the revolution going forward. The role of a party in the liberation movement or in the social movement is very important. We find that further down in one of the tasks of the proletariat in the revolution, to the Third International at its plenary, Lenin concludes by making the following point, that these reactionary elements preach socialism in words, but in practice, they are joining the bourgeoisie in every serious dealing against the working class interest. And they must be expelled from the working class party. This is Lenin, as he makes a final point about the fate of reactionary elements, orthodox and pseudo-Marxist. On the question of bourgeois democratic revolution, which in South Africa is called the National Democratic Revolution, Lenin says the Marxist theory of class struggle distinguishes what is the proletariat or working class revolution and bourgeois revolution. Clearly, if in South Africa we've got what is called National Democratic Revolution, which according to literature is nothing else but bourgeois revolution, it means we're in trouble. We ought to distinguish between the working class revolution and the bourgeois democratic revolution. How far is this national democratic revolution will take the working class? Does it advance the interests of the working class, or it advances the interests of the bourgeoisie? This is an important question. The bourgeois democratic revolution, essentially, what it seeks to achieve, as Lenin highlights, is to abolish only remnants of feudalism and to transform the capitalist system to serve the bourgeoisie. To have free development of capital from racial exclusion. And in the political sphere, to abolish all remnants of national oppression and to establish universal suffrage, where one man, one vote, parliamentary democracy, and equality of rights for all citizens is guaranteed. That's what the bourgeois democratic revolution seeks to achieve. That's the beginning and end of it. It can't take us any further. And the evidence is before us in this country, under the leadership of the former liberation movement. On the other hand, the task of the socialist revolution, the proletariat revolution, in the economic sphere, this distinction is important, it ought to be made, is to abolish capitalist ownership and establish public socialist ownership of the means of production. And in the political sphere, to establish proletarian democracy based on egalitarian system of government on the basis of the principle from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. It's important that fighters we internalize this so that as we engage in the struggle, we fully understand what is at stake and the task before us. Furthermore, Lenin brings to our attention the lessons that must be taken lightly. And these lessons, essentially, once taken seriously, will be able to take the revolution, the working class proletariat revolution, to its proper conclusion. And as he highlights contradictions within the working class proletariat organization, he emphasizes the centrality of theory and practice. He says theory without practice is blind, and practice without theory is sterile. It's important that we internalize all of this. We equip ourselves with the theory of revolution, because the working class has nothing else except the theory of revolution to advance the struggle, to bring to an end a capitalist exploitative system, and to replace the capitalist relations in the ownership of means of production with a socialist system that places at the center of everything the interests of the people and not profit interest. It's important that we equip ourselves with these tools because the revolution essentially is about the proletariat, is about the working class. There can be no revolution without the working class. The people themselves make the revolution. The leadership of the party, the leadership of the economic freedom fighter provide overall political, ideological guidance to the working class people to execute and carry forward the revolution, which is essential about the people themselves. We think that with this kind of discussions going forward, we'll be able to understand why we have an organization such as the EFF, why its program of action is socialism, why the non-negotiable 7 cardinal pillars are so central in the advancement of the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. What other tools that are at the disposal of the working class people to advance the struggle other than Marxism and Leninism and Fanonism? What are tools that are at our disposal? These are the tools that will enrich and enable the movement, the members and supporters to grasp the centrality of the theory of revolution, make it their daily bread, and ensure that we advance the revolution, applying these tools on a regular basis, evaluate them and learn from our mistakes, carry forward the good experience that we have learned from our people, and build a moment or moments for revolutionary upsurge. It is without this tool of revolution that we will not be able to take forward the struggle. The economic freedom fighters with his document what the coming revolution, which entails and elaborate fully the kind of the revolution under the leadership of the EFF that will be led. First and foremost, must deliver South Africa to the attainment of economic freedom in our lifetime as a direct route to socialism. And once the primary elements of the founding manifesto of the EFF, the demands as generally referred to as the pillars, are realized, we shall have built the solid foundation for a socialist revolution. Without the realization and attainment of the non-negotiable cardinal pillars in our lifetime, the chances that there will be a socialist revolution and a search forward towards a socialist state, such will just be a wish list. Such will just be a dream, because we need to build these conditions for socialism now as we build consciousness around the program of action of the economic freedom fighters and obtain the essential elements of this program. And this program is a socialist program, and it will take us to socialism. And under the conditions of socialism, where the power shall be restored and reside with the masses of our people, the principle that shall apply, according to Marxism, is from each according to his ability. And once that has been massified among the working class people, and fast-track the process towards the second stage of the revolution, which will take us to a communist system. The principle that follows that, which shall be central in arranging relations amongst classes, which will be they will be gradually be phasing out, will be a principle from each according to his needs, to each according to his ability. I think so far fighters and supporters of the EFF, our brothers and sisters in Africa and everywhere else in diaspora, we have engaged on this critical question of what is to be done and its centrality in the revolution. It's a question that propels the revolution forward. It's a question that brings out to the open tendencies that must be confronted, that must be combated in the movement, in the organization broadly, and anchor the revolutionary movement at the center of championing, of leading socialist revolution towards its logical conclusion. Tolerance of such tendencies, as Lenin highlighted them, is run a risk of weakening the organization from within, undermining its ability and capacity to fight wage struggles, and make a hot bed of opportunism and careerists within the organization. And the lessons that we see next door in other parties that call themselves Communist Party and so forth, we can clearly see for ourselves that neglect of adherence to Marxist principles, adherence to the working class aspirations, following a strict line, a revolutionary line, a party line, towards the advancement of the revolution. The risk is history will push out on the sideway. And history, often than not, for those who betray these principles, for those who choose the easy route, for those who undermine the fury of revolution, history, more often than not, teaches us that history shall not be kind when it judges such elements. So was the case with orthodox and pseudo-Marxists in Russia during the time of Lenin. They had to be driven out and to leave the party with those that can be dependable, with those that can be trusted, upon whom the party could take the struggle forward to its logical conclusion. I think we have spent some time together, and we are learning as we go forward with the struggle. We hope that these discussions will enrich us and make us better individuals as we take up struggles in communities, as we take up struggles in workplaces, as we take up struggles at universities and everywhere else. Most importantly, the working class is engaged in these discussions, facilitated and led by the EFF, at the middle of the novel COVID-19 virus, which is a very, very serious disease. We need to be educating one another about the seriousness of this disease and how we as humanity stand at the crossroad should this disease vanquish us. We need to fight against the disease just as we have to fight against capitalism, just as we have to fight against white monopoly capital, just as we have to fight against tendencies that seek to weaken and undermine the fighting capacity of the party to wage the struggle successfully. Coronavirus is a reality, it needs to be confronted, and you can all confront it because it's an invisible killer. The only way of confronting it is to observe the regulations, the measures that government has outlined, of social distancing, of washing our hands as regularly as possible, of putting all personal protective equipment, of ensuring that we stay at home where it's possible, because fighting a fight against a virus like this is a fight to the end. It's a fight to the bitter end. It's a fight of our life. We need to emerge victoriously. And any death that we suffer undermines the working class and its chances to wage a serious struggle against the capitalist classes that enriches itself at the expense of the working class through exploitation and through all forms of exploitation. So let's keep saying let's do what we can do possibly and remain alive. We love you all. We love Africa. We love Africans wherever they are in diaspora. We want to see you strong and going beyond the coronavirus. Thank you so much.